have received an accusation in my comments, and it has turned into an argument of a bunch of people on my behalf. So I just thought I would address it here. And the accusation I have received is that I am not preaching the message of Jesus, and that what I talk about on my page is a woke twisting of the truth of scripture that's meant to appeal to sinners and cater to the world. And it's not the hard truths of who Jesus is. And the evidence posited for this accusation is the fact that if you look through my comment section, a lot of the people who are mad at me are Christians, traditionally conservative, traditional type Christians, really don't like the things that I say. Some would even say they hate me. And a lot of the people who love the things that I say and are thankful for my interpretations of the Bible and are thankful to me for speaking out, a lot of those people are people that you might categorize as the world. It's people who don't associate themselves with God very much, or people who've deconstructed from religion. And the argument the person is making in my comment section, who I'm not gonna call them out because then everyone's gonna be mean to them, and that's not the goal. Please don't do that. But the argument that they're making is that Jesus said, "Those who hated me will hate you." And so if the people who hate me are on the Jesus team and the people who love me are on the world team, then I must not be preaching the message of Jesus. And it was almost this idea of like, as a Christian, you can tell you're doing a good job when everyone's mad at you. Like, as a Christian, you know that you're on the right path when everyone hates you, because Jesus said, if they hated me, they're gonna hate you. Now, I, right off the bat, take issue with gauging yourself and anything about your character or your value based on the way that people respond to you. I think you should only ever gauge your character and your value based on the words of God, because God is your creator and God is the only entity in all of the cosmos who has the right to label you anything. So you should only be listening to God, but that's another video for another day. This video, let's talk about who hated Jesus, because people did hate him, but who hated Jesus? Did the Samaritan woman at the well hate Jesus? I don't think so. Did the Roman centurion, whose servant Jesus raised from the dead, did he hate Jesus? I don't think so. What about Zacchaeus? Probably not. What about the woman that Jesus called a dog? She probably hated him. No, she didn't. Interesting. There's this idea, I think, in the modern church that it was kind of like Jesus and the 12 against the world, and it was this ragtag group of 13, and everywhere they went, everybody hated them, and everything they did, they got kicked out of towns, and it was just this small little group of guys, and then they changed the world, and they were so small, and it was just them, and da-da-da-da. Now, to some extent, that's true. They did get chased out of towns on a couple of occasions. People tried to kill Jesus like a couple of times in the Gospels, but like, it wasn't just Jesus and his 12 and then everyone else hated them. We have passages in the Gospel where it says that Jesus sent his disciples out in twos to like practice casting out demons or preaching or anything or da-da-da-da, whatever they were doing. And he sends them out in groups of 2, and he sends out 72. Or some manuscripts say 70. Now, in the Bible, sometimes I'll give you a little fun fact about the Bible. A lot of times numbers don't actually mean numerical value. A lot of times numbers are symbolic. So when you see like the number 40 or you see the number 7 or you see the number 70 or anything like that, you shouldn't be thinking like the actual number. You should be thinking like a symbolic meaning. So we don't know that he actually sent out like the literal number 70 or the literal number 72, but he sent out a lot. Like, he sent out a lot of disciples. He had a lot of disciples. The 12 were just also the ones who were appointed as apostles, but he had 12 apostles. He had tons of disciples. And also, let's think about the story where he multiplies the fish and the loaves. Jesus fed 5,000 men. And in addition to those men, there were an unnumbered amount of women and children with them. So at one point, Jesus had at least 5,000, but probably closer to 10,000 people who followed him around, who loved to hear the things that he said and wanted to see his miracles and wanted to learn from him, to the point that they followed him out into the desert and they didn't even stop to pack dinner. Like, that was the level they were on. That was how much they were just like, we are here to listen to Jesus and do nothing but listen to Jesus. That's a lot of people that did not hate him. Furthermore, let's look at the type of people that did not hate him, right? Who were Jesus's friends? Who were Jesus's disciples? Who were the people that Jesus ate with? It was sinners. It was outcasts. It was criminals. It was tax collectors. It was prostitutes. It was traitors. It was ethnic others. It was women and children. The absolute lowest rung of the social ladder. It was so many people that would have been categorized as the world. Jesus had a reputation of being a glutton and a drunkard. Like, You don't get that kind of reputation from only hanging out with the cool religious people. Like, Jesus was in the world. And the response from the world to Jesus was not hatred, because the way that Jesus interacted with the world was not hateful. Like, the response to Jesus was dramatic life change. It was Zacchaeus flipping his whole world around and saying, I'm going to give back fourfold what I've taken. It was like people getting told, go and sin no more, and then they went and they sinned no more. It was people, like, following him. It was people being like, I'm gonna go and preach the message. There were people that Jesus had to, like, calm down. Like, Jesus would do a miracle, and then he would have to go and tell that person, don't tell anybody that I did this. Don't go and preach my name. Don't go and say what I've done here today. Because there was just so many people following him, and it was so overwhelming. It was so much. There was so much love for Jesus because Jesus gave so much love out. That was the response to Jesus. But there were people who hated him. So who were those people? I hate to break it to you, it was religious people. It was the Pharisees, it was the Sadducees, it was the Zealots, it was the temple officials. It was the people who were so stubborn in their hearts about their understanding of the scripture and their understanding of God. It was the people who thought they knew without a doubt, and they were right without a doubt about everything pertaining to God, that when God walked amongst them and they were challenged, and they were seeing something they didn't expect, the only response they could have had was hatred. That's how stubborn their hearts were. Those are the people who hated Jesus. Those are the people who killed Jesus. And by the way, let's just think about the story of Jesus' execution for a minute. How did that go down? The Pharisees snuck into the garden in the dead of night. In the dead of night, they came to kidnap Jesus. Like they were on some sort of Mission Impossible spy thing. Why didn't they arrest him in the broad daylight? Well, maybe it was because Jesus had thousands and thousands of people who loved him, who might have jumped up like Peter did to defend him if they had taken him in broad daylight. Maybe. And then they take him to this like mock trial kangaroo court mockery of a legal thing to bring a case against him. Why did they do that? Why didn't they do that the right way? Why did they do that in the dead of night into this mock court? Why didn't they follow the proper legal proceedings of the day? Maybe because Jesus' reputation preceded him in such a way that their argument wouldn't have held water if they had done it the right way. They brought false witnesses against him. They took what he said out of context. They twisted his character. They lied about Jesus to rally a crowd against him, to elicit anger and elicit hate. Why did they do that? Why did they lie about Jesus? Maybe because if they had told the truth about Jesus, they could not rally anger and hatred against him, because the truth of who Jesus was did not elicit hatred and anger. The truth of who Jesus was elicited people throwing their cloaks down on the ground and waving palm branches in the air and singing Hosanna. That was the response to Jesus. The response to Jesus was love for everyone except for the religiously stubborn. And part of me wonders, like, how many people in the crowd who, like, called for Barabbas and called to have Jesus crucified, how many of those people even hated Jesus? Really and truly? Or how many of them had been lied to? How many of them had started to believe the false witness instead of the truth of who Jesus was? How many people hated Jesus, or how many people hated the version of Jesus they were lied to about? And how many people were just swept up in mob mentality? Like, there have been so many psychological studies done in the modern day of like the way that your brain can do crazy things in groupthink or in mob mentality. And they're like, so many people will die on hills they never would have stood on to begin with, just because of mob mentality and just because they got swept up in a crowd. Like, how many people who killed Jesus and like called for his death even hated him to begin with? Because when you look at the stories of Jesus and the way that people responded to Jesus, there isn't a lot of hatred from anyone other than the religious leaders. Like, there's a little bit, we get some weird stories, but again, a lot of those are like wrapped up in like, it was the Pharisees kind of initiating all of this hatred and da-da-da-da-da. The response to Jesus was love. The response to Jesus was life change. The response to Jesus was a desire to follow him. Why? Because Jesus did everything in love. Because Jesus' defining character trait was love. Because Jesus said, they will know you by your love. And that's the other thing that's important to mention. Like, yeah, Jesus said, those who hated me will hate you. But Jesus also said, they will know you by your love. The defining trait of a Christian is love. And there are people who hate Christians, and there are people who hate the church. And I've talked to a lot of them. And I've never talked to someone who hates Christianity or hates the church and doesn't have like such a valid reason to feel that way. Every story I hear of people who've like walked away from the church is a story of people who have been so horrifically mistreated. It is people who's like the fact that they are the image bearer of God has just been overlooked in every possible way. And then that's why they hate the church. And it's just this idea of like the idea of taking pride as a Christian and how many people hate you is so gross to me. It's so gross to me when we are told that they will know you by your love. And like, yeah, there are people who hate the church. And yeah, there are people who hate Christians. But why? If you're a Christian and you're feeling hated, why? Is it because you're preaching the harsh truth of Jesus? And you're preaching the good word and people can't handle it? Or is it because you're being a jerk? Like, people hate the church now because they feel hated by the church now. People hated Jesus then because Jesus loved in a way that was too radical. That is a stark difference. That is a difference that should be gut-wrenching to anyone who's a part of the church today. Are you hated? Why? Why? Why are you hated? Why are you hated? And by who are you hated? Why was Jesus hated? And by who was he hated? Are you measuring yourself on hate or are you measuring yourself on love? Because Jesus said they will know you by your love. Jesus said of all of the commandments that you could ever follow, the two that matter are love God and love others. They will know you by your love. They're not supposed to know us by the hate.